plastic molds. Are they really as people think they are? Let's talk. Now, I know plastic molds don't have as good of a rep as silicone molds. However, with a little patience and a little practice and a little time, you too can create beautiful pillars using plastic molds. Let's get started. So these are all the items that you will need to complete this project. You've got the double boiler there, the temperature gun, the color, the mold, the pitcher, something to seal the mold release spray, the wick, some tweezers, wick bar, scissors, no wicking needle for this, and a stirring utensil. So let's dive in. So while I'm waiting for my wax to melt down, I am going to prep the mold. And we're going to start off by using some of this mold release spray. And this is the one that I use. And then we're going to shake it. And then we're going to coat the inside. And what this does is make it easier for your candle to release from the mold once it's done cooling. So we gave it a little coat. Now it's time to get our wick through this little center here. And what's nice about plastic molds is that you're always going to know that your wick is centered for this candle because it has this little wick insert hole. And so it's a little tight and it's not going to be able to let our wicking needle through. So what I like to do is go ahead and get my wick, go ahead and get a little bit off the spool, and then just try to guide it with some tweezers through the hole there. So just kind of thread it through like this. Feed it through, keep feeding it. And then what's going to happen is once you get it in, you can just kind of guide it through like that. And then voila, see? And then I like to measure out how much I want to leave so I can stir the air bubbles out. I think that's probably good enough. Maybe, yeah, that's probably good. Then I'll flip it back over, get my scissors, and cut. So now we're done with this. And now what you're going to need to do is seal that up so your wax doesn't spill out. And what I like to use is, I guess this is considered wall putty or wall tacky stuff. And I just tear off a bit like this, roll it up, and then put it over, cover the hole so that you don't have to worry about the wax spilling out. And that should be good enough. All right. You can do a little tug. See, it's pretty stuck in there. And now you just have to wait for our wax to melt. All right, guys. So I've got my wax measured out and ready to go in the pitcher. And now I'm going to add it to the boiler. And yes, I am doing the double boiler method for this candle because I have to add color. And it's easy for me to just heat up the wax using the double boiler while I get the color how I want. And as I add the color, you'll see what I mean. All righty, so I got my wax melted down, temperature clocking in at 205, but that's okay. We're not really too concerned about the temperature with this. Well, you know, because we're not adding fragrance, but for the color, I'm not too concerned about the temperature. So first I'm going for a nice dark blue color. And so for that, I will be adding blue first. So get a nice blue base. Sprinkle that in there. Once again, this is why we have parchment paper down, to collect any mess we might make. Okay, so I'm gonna start with that. And then I'm gonna stir that in. See, the wax is turning a nice shade of blue. All right, again, this is the important part, and that is splotch testing. And by splotch, I mean take a little bit from your stirring utensil. And as you can see in this case, it's my spatula. But I'm gonna do a little splotch on the parchment paper to see if I like that basic shade of blue. And you wanna make sure that your splotch is kind of on the thicker side to get an accurate representation of the color for your candle. Because if you do it too thin, the color representation won't be as accurate as it will be for the finished product. All right. Okay. So as you can see, it's pretty blue. And your wax that's cooled is always going to be lighter than the hot melted wax. So just FYI, another reason we do splotch testing. So you can actually see what color this candle will be when it's actually cool. This is still cooling, but you can see on the outer edges is going to be a nice soft blue. But I want a dark blue. Therefore, I will literally add a pinch, just a tiny little pinch of black to my blue at a time, because that black is a powerful color, and it will definitely, just a little speckle will transform your cool blue color into something much darker. So let's see, we've got that nice and stirred in. And then it will be time for another splotch test. All right, and I'm gonna do that one next to this so we can see the color comparison. All right, you gotta be mindful of wrinkles in your parchment paper as you saw that rolled over. I don't know if it will really give us an accurate splotch here. As you can see, it's already a little darker than that. All right, and then we just add a little bit of black to that blue at a time until I get the color that I'm looking for. Okay, so you see that the two splotches have cooled. I've put my wax back in the double boiler because I don't want it to get too cold. I won't be able to work with it and get my color exactly how I want it. So you see, this was the original blue, and this was the blue with a little bit of black added. And this is the actual color that I'm trying to achieve. So I want this nice, I call it a cool blue, but you know, whatever you want to call this, but it's definitely a darker shade of blue. So this is the color that I'm trying to achieve. And so obviously, that's not it. It's way too light, right? So just go ahead and throw that back in the pot. And now we can lift up our little splotch sample with the a little bit of black added. You can see it's a little darker than that blue, but still not as dark as I'm trying to achieve. So it's time to add a little bit of black and see if we can get it to this color. So this time I'm going with a little bit bigger of a flake. You can see. And I'm going to add that and then stir it up. The wax should be nice and hot because it's just coming off that water. And we're going to do another splotch test and wait for that to cool and then compare it to that blue model, that model candle, and see how it matches up. So you can see it's definitely a little darker. All right, let's do our little splotch test. Oh yeah, that's definitely a little darker. But like I said, even though it looks darker with the melted wax, we have to wait to see how it looks once it's cool and see if it achieves that same color. Okay, so now we're back here. And as you can see, this came out a little darker than what we were going for. So maybe two shades darker than what we are trying to achieve. But that's okay, because what we'll do, we'll still hold on to this splash as a reference, but we have some white color that we can add to lighten up that dark color a bit. And I'm going to add literally 1 drop to see how much that lightens it up. So, yep, it's still on the boiler. Add that 1 drop. We'll take it off the boiler so we can see what we're doing. And so we can stir that in. All right. Stirring. And I don't see much of a change here, just looking at the liquid wax. So I'm going to add 1 more drop of wax, not wax, but the white color. 1 more drop. And then we're going to splotch test this. Hopefully this will get us where we need to be. So remember, we're trying to get it lighter than this. Make it a little thicker. All right, and back into the pot that goes. And now we just have to wait for our splotch to cool. All right, guys, I forgot to record as I scraped up the splotch to do the comparison. But there's the piece of the splotch that's left. And here's the candle color that we're trying to get. So keep in mind that this candle is maybe 2 years old. So some of the color has faded. And it looks like that's probably as close as I'm going to get to this. Because I don't want to add too much white color to it. Because what happens is if you add too much white, it makes the candle come out looking a little chalky, which is not what we want. So it's going to just be maybe a shade darker than this model. But I can live with it. It's definitely a dark blue. And so hopefully the buyer will like this too. But there you go. Pretty close. And so now all we have to do is wait for our wax to cool to the appropriate temperature and pour. Okay, so we're currently at 195-ish. Give it a quick stir, which is actually the perfect temperature for me. And my wax combination, I love anywhere between 190 and 195. All right, we stirred it, and that got it to 190. So I'm actually going to pop this back on the heat to get it up about 5 more degrees. And then to do that, I'm going to pour. Okay, so we're fresh off the heat. We're at 192 and perfect for me to pour. And then you want to try to do a steady pour to prevent a lot of air bubbles from forming. This is also a good time to pray that you sealed that bottom correctly or tightly so that, you wouldn't have a literal hot mess on your hands. But at least it'll be on parchment paper, if that's any consolation. All right, we're still pouring. Pouring. There we go. All right. Pitcher empty. And now we do our stirring. Stir, stir, stir. And then we can lift this up and do a gentle tap. Make sure we can tap out any air bubbles. I don't see any on the sides, but that will be hard to see anyway because this is so dark. All right, that's probably good for stirring. Could do some taps, which, to be honest, this doesn't work as good as it does on silicone molds, but that's why I like to do the counter tap. One final stir. And now we need our wick bar. And there we go. And now we have to wait for it to cool. So the candle has started to cool. As you can see, it's still cooling, different colors there compared to where it's the coolest at the bottom. And as it cools, you'll notice that there's a slight depression that's starting to form. That's totally okay. What you could do is, if you had enough wax, which I did not have, is just wait for this to cool some more and then pour another layer of wax to fill in that depression in the candle. Or if you're like me and you don't have enough wax to do that, this is when you get out your old friend, and probably the candle maker's best friend, whether you're making container candles or whether you're making pillars like me. You're always going to need some type of heat gun, and which is what I'm about to get out now and work on smoothing out the bottom of this candle so you don't have this depression that's going to be, unsightly in the candle. So I've got it here. This is the one that I use, Chandler, which is another way to say candle maker, a fancy way to say that. I'm gonna let that warm up. All right, it feels pretty hot on my hand. So then now, apply it to the candle. All right, and then you repeat these steps as necessary, depending on how big of a depression you have in that candle. But as of right now, I'm gonna leave it as is. I don't know if I want to put the wick bar back on here or not. I guess I will, just to be on the safe side, to make sure that candle doesn't move the wick as it cools. Oops. There we go. And then we'll check back on it in a little bit and see if we need to apply another heat gun round to it. So I actually ended up letting this candle sit overnight, and now I'm getting ready to release it from the mold. And because it sat for such a long time, it should just plop right out of that plastic mold with no issues. And I'm making sure that I get all the sticky stuff off the bottom that sealed in the wax. And then I give it a little squeeze on all sides to make sure it's ready to pop out. And then it should just slide out. And as you can see, it does with no issues. So I think the main thing about using plastic molds is that you really just have to give it time to completely cool inside of the mold before your candle is ready to ease on out. And right here, I'm simply just going around and cleaning up some of the candle debris, I guess, and getting it out of the in between the ridges. And then once that's all cleaned up, this candle should be good to go. And this was the result. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you plan on trying a plastic mold, let me know how your experience is by letting me know below. Until then, catch you later.